They came to erase it. Alexander the Great marched in with the greatest army Greece ever produced. He burned the capital to the ground. He stood on the ashes and declared victory. Within 50 years, his successors were wearing Persian robes, speaking Persian, and begging Persian scholars to run their government. The Mongols came next. Genghis Khan's armies turned entire cities into graveyards. They destroyed irrigation systems that had fed millions for 1,000 years. They built pyramids out of human skulls. Within 2 generations, the Mongol rulers of Iran had converted to Islam, made Persian the official language of their court, and were funding Persian poets and architects. Every empire that came to destroy Iran became Iranian. This is the story of the only civilization in human history that learned how to lose, and use that loss as a weapon. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how a civilization survived 50 centuries of conquest, invasion, and occupation without disappearing. We are going to follow Iran from its origins, older than Egypt, older than Rome, through the Macedonian conquest, the Arab invasion, the Mongol Apocalypse, and into the modern world. And we are going to see how a single cultural mechanism, refined over 5,000 years, allowed Iran to do what no other civilization on Earth has managed: absorb every conqueror that ever arrived at its borders and turn them into Persians. The Greeks couldn't do it. The Romans couldn't do it. Egypt couldn't do it. Iran did it repeatedly. And understanding how is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of the world. The Western world has a habit of placing civilization's origin in 2 places: Mesopotamia and Egypt. The Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Pharaohs. We learn about them in school. We visit their artifacts in museums. We treat them as the starting point of everything that came after. This is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Archaeological evidence from the Iranian plateau tells a different story. Urban settlements dating back 6,000 to 7,000 years. Ceramic vessels from the 4th millennium before Christ. A civilization called the Elamites, based in the southwest of modern Iran. So powerful that by the 26th century before Christ, they were dictating terms to the Sumerians. In the 23rd century before Christ, a written treaty was signed between Elam and the Akkadian Empire. A formal agreement between 2 states, with terms, conditions, and guarantees. Historians consider this the first documented international treaty in human history. The Iranian cultural space was present at the birth of global diplomacy. The people we call Iranians today arrived on this plateau later, between the 20th and 15th centuries before Christ. Nomadic tribes descending from Central Asia and the Caucasus. They called themselves Aryans, meaning noble, and named their new homeland the Land of the Aryans. Over centuries, that word evolved into the name we know today: Iran. They mixed with the ancient Elamite culture, split into tribes and alliances, and produced 2 groups that would eventually shake the world: the Medes and the Persians. Before the first Persian king unified these tribes, something happened on this plateau that would change human consciousness permanently. A religion was born. Not a religion of rituals and offerings to unpredictable gods. Something completely different. Something that no civilization before had ever conceived. Zoroastrianism declared that the universe was not random. It was a battlefield. On one side, Ahura Mazda, the god of light, truth, and order. On the other, Ahriman, the spirit of absolute evil, darkness, and lies. Every human being was a soldier in this war, whether they chose to be or not. Every action, every word, every decision was a vote for one side or the other. This idea gave the Iranian people something that most ancient civilizations lacked entirely: moral clarity. A sense of unified purpose that transcended tribe, clan, and region. To be Iranian was to be a warrior of light. That identity could survive anything, even military defeat. But Zoroastrianism did something even more radical. It declared that time does not move in a circle. This sounds obvious to us today, but in the ancient world, virtually every civilization understood time as cyclical. Seasons change, empires rise and fall. The same patterns repeat endlessly. Zoroastrianism said no. Time is linear. The world had a beginning. It will have an end. A final battle. A last judgment. A conclusion. This single idea, linear time, flowed from Zoroastrianism into Judaism during the 2 centuries when Judea was a Persian province after Cyrus the Great liberated the Jews from Babylonian captivity. From Judaism, it entered Christianity. From Christianity, it shaped Islam. The entire Western concept of history as progress toward a destination, of time as something with meaning and direction, traces directly back to Iranian theology developed on this plateau 4,000 years ago. Friedrich Nietzsche, who named his greatest philosophical work after the Zoroastrian prophet Zarathustra, acknowledged it openly. Iran gave the world the coordinates of time within which we still think today. In 550 before Christ, a man named Cyrus united the Persian and Median tribes and began building what historians would call the Achaemenid Empire, the first superpower in the history of the world. The scale of it is difficult to comprehend. At its height under Darius I, the Persian Empire stretched from Egypt to the Indus Valley, from modern Greece to modern Pakistan. Nearly 50 million people, roughly half the population of the entire Earth at that time, lived under Persian rule. No empire before it had come close to this. And what made it different was not just the size, it was the method. Cyrus was not a destroyer. When he conquered Lydia, he preserved its temples. When he took Babylon, he freed the Jews who had been enslaved there, issued the first known declaration of human rights, and allowed conquered peoples to practice their own religions and maintain their own customs. He built an empire on respect rather than terror, and discovered that an empire built on respect requires far fewer soldiers to maintain. Darius expanded this system. He divided the empire into 20 administrative districts called satrapies, each governed by a local administrator accountable to the central throne. He introduced a unified tax system, minted gold coins, and built a network of roads along which the fastest postal relay system in the ancient world operated. A message could travel from Persepolis to Sardis, a distance of nearly 2,500 kilometers, in a week. This was the world's first functioning global bureaucracy, a system of governance sophisticated enough to manage 50 million people across 3 continents. The Greeks tried to destroy it. We remember the Persian Wars through Greek eyes. The 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, the Athenian victory at Marathon. These stories are real, but they miss something important. For the Persian Empire, the Greek wars were a border skirmish. Losing control of a few Aegean cities was, for an empire of 50 million people stretching to India, roughly equivalent to losing a small county. The Persians responded not with armies, but with money. They began funding first Athens, then Sparta, systematically turning the Greeks against each other. In 387 before Christ, the exhausted Greek city-states were forced to sign a peace treaty on Persian terms. What the Persian army could not take, Persian gold purchased. The Greeks never threatened Persia again. The real catastrophe came from a direction no one expected. Not from the east, from the northwest. From a young Macedonian king who had read too many Greek stories about Persian wealth and convinced himself he was a god. In 330 before Christ, Alexander's forces destroyed the Persian army and burned Persepolis, the magnificent capital that had stood at the center of the world's first superpower. It seemed like the end. 1,000 years of Iranian civilization reduced to ash by a 25-year-old Macedonian. And then something strange happened. Alexander himself began wearing Persian robes. He adopted Persian court ceremonies. He demanded that his Greek and Macedonian officers bow before him in the Persian fashion, a practice called proskynesis that scandalized his own generals. He married a Bactrian princess. He encouraged his officers to marry Persian women. He was, by the time of his death, becoming more Persian than Greek. After Alexander died, his successors, the Seleucids, tried to impose Greek culture on the Iranian plateau. They built Greek cities, promoted Greek language, imported Greek customs. They called this Hellenization. The Iranian plateau called it irrelevant. Within a century, a new Iranian dynasty, the Parthians, had expelled the Seleucids and rebuilt an Iranian state. The Parthian ruler declared himself King of Kings, directly inheriting the Achaemenid title. The Greek interlude had lasted barely 200 years. The Iranian identity had survived completely intact. And for the next 5 centuries, the Parthians held the line against the Roman Empire, the most powerful military force the Western world had produced. Roman legions that had conquered everything from Britain to Egypt could not break through into Iran. The Parthian cavalry, using tactics including the famous Parthian shot, firing arrows accurately at full gallop while retreating, destroyed Roman armies in the Middle East repeatedly. Iran had not just survived Alexander, it had recovered, reorganized, and stopped Rome. By the 7th century, Iran was exhausted. The Sassanid dynasty, which had replaced the Parthians in 224 and built another magnificent Persian empire, had spent 4 centuries in grinding warfare against Rome and then Byzantium. Both empires had bled themselves white fighting over Mesopotamia and the Caucasus. Into this exhaustion came something neither empire was prepared for: a new religion from the Arabian desert, moving with terrifying speed behind armies of motivated believers. In 651, the last Sassanid Shah was murdered. The Persian capital fell. The Arab Caliphate absorbed the entire Iranian plateau. The religion that had defined Iranian identity for 2,000 years, Zoroastrianism, began to fade. The Arabic language moved in as the language of administration, scholarship, and prayer. For any other civilization, this would have been the end. Egypt became Arab. Syria became Arab. Babylon had already disappeared centuries earlier. Civilizations that the Persians themselves had once ruled were permanently transformed by the Arab Conquest and never recovered their original identity. Iran was different. The Arab rulers needed administrators. The Caliphate was vast, stretching from Spain to Central Asia, and the Arabs did not have the bureaucratic tradition to run it. The Persians did. They had been running complex empires for 1,000 years. So Persian scholars, Persian administrators, Persian poets, and Persian architects flooded into the centers of Arab power. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad became the center of Islamic civilization, and the civilization it centered was, in enormous part, Persian. Persian scholars translated Greek philosophy into Arabic. Persian administrators ran the government. Persian poets defined the literary standards of the Islamic world. The Farsi language not only survived, it became the language of high culture across an enormous swath of the Islamic world, from Istanbul to Delhi. The Arab conquerors had changed Iran's religion. Iran had changed everything else about its conquerors. What the Arabs represented in political terms, the Mongols represented in apocalyptic terms. In 1220, Genghis Khan arrived. What followed was not conquest in any normal sense. It was systematic annihilation. The Mongols did not just defeat armies, they slaughtered entire urban populations. They destroyed the underground irrigation systems, the qanats, that had made the Iranian plateau habitable for thousands of years. Merv, one of the largest cities on Earth, was erased. Nishapur was erased. Estimates of the dead range into the millions. I want to be direct about what this meant. The Mongol destruction of Iran was one of the greatest demographic catastrophes in human history. The population of Iran may have fallen by as much as 3/4. Some regions did not recover for centuries. The agricultural system that had fed Iranian civilization for millennia was deliberately dismantled. This was not incidental damage, it was policy. And then, within 2 generations, something happened that no one in the Mongol world expected. Hulagu Khan, Genghis's grandson, founded a Mongol state in Iran called the Ilkhanate. He and his successors were conquerors who had grown up in yurts on the steppe. Within decades, they had converted to Islam, made Persian the official language of their court, and were building magnificent Persian mosques with blue-tiled domes and funding Persian poets and scientists. The process repeated again at the end of the 14th century when Tamerlane swept through, building pyramids of skulls, and simultaneously standing in awe of Persian artisans, taking the best of them back to his capital, and producing descendants who sparked a Persian cultural renaissance. For 300 years, political power in Iran belonged to Mongols and Turks. But within a generation or two of taking the Iranian throne, they became Persian. The Iranian cultural code reprogrammed its conquerors with a consistency that begins to look less like coincidence and more like a deliberate strategy refined over millennia. Out of this centuries-long cycle of invasion and absorption emerged a new Iranian state in 1501, the Safavid dynasty, which made Shia Islam the official religion of Iran and permanently separated it from the Sunni Ottoman world surrounding it. Once again, Iran had forged a distinct identity sharp enough to resist assimilation from any direction. By the 19th century, Iran faced a new kind of threat. Not armies, but economics. British oil companies pumped Iranian petroleum while Russian troops occupied the north. The country was carved into spheres of influence without a single battle being fought. In 1925, a military officer named Reza Shah Pahlavi took power and did something that shocked international diplomacy. He sent an official directive to every embassy in the world: stop calling this country Persia. From now on, use its true name, the name Iranians had always called themselves, Iran. This was not a bureaucratic formality, it was a declaration. Persia was a name Europeans had given this country, derived from the Greek word for a single province. It carried associations of exoticism, fairy tales, backwardness. Iran meant something different. It meant the land of the Aryans. It meant continuity with 5,000 years of unbroken civilization. It meant, we are not your colonial subject. We are something older than your entire concept of history. The story of Iran is not a story about winning. It is a story about surviving, and then turning survival into something more permanent than victory. Alexander won every battle. He didn't survive. His empire lasted less than a century. Iran is still here. The Arab Caliphate conquered Iran completely. The Caliphate is gone. The Persian language survived it. The Mongols reduced Iranian cities to rubble. The Mongol rulers of Iran became Persian within 2 generations. What I find most remarkable about this story is what it says about the relationship between military power and cultural depth. Every empire that tried to erase Iran was militarily superior at the moment of conquest. None of them were culturally deep enough to replace what Iran had built over 5,000 years. You can burn a city. You cannot burn a language, a religion, a way of thinking about time and morality and beauty that has been refined across 50 centuries. The most durable weapon a civilization can possess is not an army. It is an identity strong enough that even its conquerors want to adopt it. Iran invented that weapon, and it has been using it ever since. If this story of civilizational survival made you think differently about power, the video on screen covers how the Mongol war machine that devastated Iran worked from the inside. Watch it now.